What's up, guys? I hope you're all well. Chadio here. Today we're checking out the animated history of England part 2. Let's get into it, shall we?
Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary Viking king of Denmark and Sweden, hangs in a cage suspended above a pit. His enemies, led by the King of Northumbria, taunt him through the night. He is released into a pit of snakes where he dies alone. As news of his death spreads to Denmark, his sons gather the greatest Viking army yet assembled and sail to war. They arrive on the shores of England, Hvitserk, Björn Einstein, Ubba, and Ivar the Boneless, commanding the Great Heathen Army.
Ooh. Would you call me? Alright. Hope you all are enjoying these series. I'm really liking them. I like how they're informative and short and put a nice twist to it with it being animated.
Ég var an reitha for a beishna kumina over Northumberland, and that folk I amlich bredon, that var on ormeta thodnas ond ligreshas, und fyrna drakan var I sevina o tham lyfta fleogende. Lafta tham, tasil chanjaris, I armlicha hadranen mana, junk, adi legode godis chirjani lindisfalle, doch reavlich and manslicht.
The Danes, who were first Vikings and then conquerors, took over vast swathes of England in the 9th century. This area was known as the Danelaw. The other half of England was Wessex and its tributaries, splitting England in two, although many Danes lived there as well. In the Danelaw, a unique Anglo-Danish culture emerged, having a profound influence on the English language and society. Alfred and his successors managed to chip away at the Danish holdings in the coming decades and eventually reconquered England under the House of Wessex, unifying it finally into the Kingdom of the English, or England. But the Viking influence on England was far from over. Ethelred the Unready was so afraid of the Danes that he paid off Viking raiders by reintroducing the Danegeld, making England a renewed target. He then made the monumental mistake by murdering all Danes in England in the St. Brice's Day massacre.
Whoops.
One of these murdered Danes was the sister of the Danish king Sweyn Forkbeard, who invaded England in 1003. Northern England crowned Sweyn as their king, which passed on to his son Canute the Great. After Ethelred's death, Canute was crowned king of all England and ruled a vast North Sea empire. Although the House of Wessex returned to power after Harthacnut died without an heir, and Edward the Confessor was chosen as king. However, Edward was a victim of political intrigue, and upon his death there were 3 claimants to the throne: Harold Godwinson, the Earl of Wessex, Canute the Great's grandson, Harold of Norway, and William the Bastard of Normandy, who once heard a rumour that Edward had chosen him. The nobles chose Godwinson, and thus war ensued. The War of 1066 began when Harold invaded from Norway, winning the Battle of Fulford, but he was soon defeated by Harold Godwinson in the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Unlucky for Harold, a few days later, William invaded from Normandy and defeated Harold at the Battle of Hastings. William was crowned king and transferred the capital from Winchester to London, as it was larger and closer to his home in Normandy. He then invaded the rest of England and became William the Conqueror. This is where England's history gets a bit French, as the House of Normandy was technically a vassal to the Kingdom of France, which caused a rivalry between the two kingdoms that would last until our day. The Normans also introduced the Code of Chivalry and more modern castles, helping solidify their rule. Robert Curthose also led the first English troops in the First Crusade in the Holy Land. Norman rule ended in civil war between Empress Matilda and her cousin Stephen of Blois, until Henry II inherited the throne, the first in the Angevin dynasty, who also ruled Anjou, Aquitaine and Normandy through inheritance, and Brittany and Ireland through submission. This meant that now more of France is ruled by the English king than the French king, made more confusing when you remember that the Angevins were in fact also French. Their most famous monarch was Richard the Lionheart, known as a wise and brave crusader who probably didn't speak a word of English. When Richard was campaigning in the Holy Land, his brother John rebelled against the crown. This is the foundation of Robin the Hood, a crusader who returned to England and fought against the injustices and tyranny of Prince John. Robin Hood is a disputed character, but was likely based on the sentiment of English peasants who were loyal to King Richard, helping solidify Robin and his band of merry men into English folklore. Around this time, the Red Cross of St. George had been brought back from the Crusaders to form the flag of England. When John became king, he signed the Magna Carta, which stripped the crown of much of its power, while continuing costly wars with France. This culminated in a civil war between Prince Louis of France and Henry III, who won the war and installed the Plantagenet dynasty. The Plantagenets were Angevins, but had lost the county of Anjou to the King of France during the war, and so could no longer claim the title. The Plantagenets are known for conquering Wales and entering into devastating wars with the Scots, who rebelled against the increasing English interference, and began the 100 Years' War in France over the English-held Aquitaine. The expulsion of Jews was also commenced in 1290, ostensibly
nice.
for religious reasons, but more importantly for the crown to inherit Jewish debt to pay for the wars. They also established the parley with lords and other nobles called the commons, which we now call parliament. The war with France also brought the Black Death to England, which killed between 30 and 40% of the population. The decrease in population brought many changes to the land, notably labour shortages and the rise of wages, contributing to a rise in the lower middle class. The last Plantagenet king was Richard II, who was deposed by Parliament in support of his cousin, the exiled Duke of Lancaster, Henry. Henry was made king as the first Lancaster dynasty, a cadet branch of the House of Plantagenet. The English had emerged from the High Middle Ages as a new people, a crusading state now expanding their zone of influence beyond their island, to Ireland, France, and the Holy Land. The language they spoke was evolving into Middle English, heavily influenced by Old Norse and Norman French.
Then longen folk to go on pilgrimages, and palmers for to segen strondes to ferne halways kuth in sundry landes, and specially from every shearers ende of England to Canterbury they wende, the holy blissful martyr for to sega that him hath holpen when that they were sega.
This reading was taken from the 26-minute documentary The History of English over at CuriosityStream, today's sponsor. Understanding the way English evolved is a fascinating tale, especially since English is now learned as a second language by more people than any other language in history. English is truly the lingua franca of the 19th century until today. You can watch this for free by using your 1-month trial by heading to CuriosityStream.
All right, well, that's part 2 of the history of England. Ugh. Y'all got a messy history over there. Don't worry. Ours isn't as old as yours, but it's just as messy over the years. But yeah, very fascinating stuff. Interesting. Never knew that the English kicked out the Jews. Wow, not very nice of y'all, but it happens. But yeah, part 3. We'll check out part 3 sometime soon. And with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching. Stay safe and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye.